become a barrier to communication. And another thing that we'll have to remember, that it does not have to go in this chronological order. That is, one may be followed by five, it may go back to two, it may go to four, it may go to three, it may go back to one again, it may go back to five. So we have to understand that it may be in a real situation, it people do not follow this chronological order of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Some people never reach acceptance, some people always are stuck in bargaining, some people are always stuck in denial. But these are the various stages that we must be aware of. Next slide. Now, this is a question to us. Can we be a barrier? Now, generally, the image of a healthcare worker looks something like the first picture on the top. And this is how our image about ourselves is. And this is how the society or the people's image of healthcare workers is. However, now in this times of pandemic, most of us are at least wearing a mask. Not everybody may be in a coverall, like in the picture, but at least everybody must be wearing a mask when they are in the clinical environment. So, what happens to the smile and what happens to the facial expression? Because non-verbal communication, body language, is very, very important. And in body language, a smile is so important, and the facial expressions are so important. And even if you make an eye contact, which is possible even with a mask or a coverall, but because rest of the face is covered, not many people are used to uh, having an having an interaction with somebody face to face with a major part of the face covered, even if the eyes are visible. So the quality of communication based on smile and the facial expression is severely impairing our ability to communicate well. We can communicate, but communicating well is a problem. So next slide. So some of the solutions are, our usual ID tags are very small. There's a suggestion that we have our pictures taken and our name written in a big format, and have some way of attaching it to our uniform. So even if you're wearing a coverall or not a coverall, but otherwise covered up, at least a smiling face on your ID tag, a big ID tag, uh, may be a good idea. And then from the previous group, somebody forwarded us this other option of a communicator mask. This is a made in America communicator mask. I don't know whether it is available in India, but I was not aware that there was something like a communicator mask. So this was something that came up with the previous group. So, as possible solution, and maybe who knows, we may find even more indigenous ways of communicating better. Next slide. Now, when we are talking about COVID, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of fear. There's going to be high stress, and high stress uh, very often comes out as anger. Anger is nothing but a high energy consuming negative emotion. It's an emotion, and there are multiple reasons why somebody gets angry, but nobody plans to get angry. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, oh, it's been a long, I have not been angry for many days, today I'm going to get angry. Nobody thinks like that, nobody behaves like that. It is the small small stresses that we encounter in our day to day life from morning till evening that usually accumulates and ends up in a big stress, which sometimes breaks out in the form of an anger. So we have to understand that somebody gets angry at me or you, the person didn't plan to get angry. We are just like that lightning conductors. We just caught that anger, because people can't get angry on a chair or a table. They have to vent it out on a human being. And in the healthcare industry, most often it is us, doctors, nurses, and other people within the institution that on whom the anger is directed. Whether we did something wrong or not is beyond the question. So, how are we going to deal with it? Next slide. When a patient or a family member gets angry, there are few things that we need to understand. Replying to them, or arguing with them, or avoiding them, or ignoring them are all going to make them more angry. And if somebody is very angry, even apologizing can increase their anger. So what is to be done? We have to facilitate the anger to flow, and for that, we don't have to say anything. We have to stand up and listen. Stand up and listen, not sit and listen. Why? Because when somebody is angry, they cannot sit down. Because of the adrenaline, they cannot sit down. So if we sit, it is again seen as an insult. So when somebody is angry, we have to stand up and listen. And how do we listen? There are two things to uh, consider. Your spine should be respectfully bent forward, not very much, but just a hint of kyphosis. But your eyes should be confidently making eye contact. Now, what does this do? When the spine is bent forward, you are showing that you are respectful towards that person. But when you, along with it, when you make an eye contact, you are telling that person, I am not afraid of you. So, both of these things will facilitate flow of anger. So you face the person with confidence and respectful stance and listen to this person. And in this way, when the person ventilates their anger, it quickly goes down, because you are neither aggravating the anger by replying or arguing, nor are you aggravating the anger by ignoring this person. And once the major anger comes down, then invite them to sit down and talk about it and let them ventilate it further. Remember, your job is to allow them to ventilate their emotion. And once they have calmed down, and then you have invited them to sit and talk about it, and they tell what all the problems were, maybe that is enough to resolve the problem. Sometimes they may bring up situations, problems that needs correction, and if something is to be corrected, please make sure that those problems are corrected. And in every situation, apology is not required. There are many situations where I have dealt with people where they have apologized to me and went away. I didn't have to apologize. But where it seems right to apologize, feel free to apologize, but only once the major anger comes down, not while people are angry. Next slide. What about your anger? What about when you are stressed out? What is to be done? First and foremost, make sure that you're taking good care of yourself. The last slide in this presentation is about self care. So make sure that you take good care of yourself. It's not worth while uh, stressing out yourself and having a burnout. It's really not worthwhile. There will be other sessions which deals with burnout, not this one. And ask somebody, your friend or your colleague, somebody, to act as a spotter. That is, if your tone of voice is becoming rough, or if you're becoming too sarcastic, and if any of those negative traits, or if you're getting very obviously angry, ask your friend to spot it and let you know. And you have to choose somebody who will give a very honest critique of your behavior, and only then you will be aware that how you are behaving, and then you will get a chance to correct yourself. So those are the things that about how one would manage stress and anger in times of COVID. Now we will go on to some do's and don'ts. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay. Now this involves body language. As I said, even with a mask, you can make an eye contact. So make sure that when you are communicating with people, you make an eye contact, because eye contact is the most important part of communication. It is the starting point of any communication. And then even if you are wearing a smile, sorry, if you wear a mask, do smile from behind the mask, because it shows in your eyes. And a smile behind the mask will also bring a smile into your voice. So a smiling voice in times of COVID is very, very important. Next slide, please. And as I said, there's a lot of stigma. So make sure that one is not categorizing people as a COVID patient, or worse to like, or worse to that effect, or he's a difficult patient, or there's a VIP patient. So all this kind of categorization creates a barrier within our mind itself, and then our behavior towards them will be affected because of the barrier in our own eyes. So the most important thing is to be non-judgmental. Do not judge people. Accept them as they are. They may be tall, they may be fat, they may be good looking. They not, according to you, may not be that good looking. It could be any number of things. But accept people as they are and respect people for what they are. And that is the best way of living life in general, and definitely as a professional. Next slide. And uh, never ask a leading question. This is unfortunately something that we all do very often. For example, your cough is better, isn't it? So this kind of question makes a patient who may be coming from a comparatively slower socioeconomic strata, they will not find the courage to tell you the right answer. The right answer may be no, I am still having this cough. But when you ask, your cough is better, isn't it? They may say yes, and you may be misled. So always ask a open-ended question. How is your cough now? How is your fever now? How is your pain now? How are you now? And that is the best way of asking a very open-ended question. How are you? Next slide. Now this is again very important. uh, do not minimize patients' problems. Don't get worried over such a small problem. This is nothing. And don't compare their problems with other problems. There are so many people who are facing much bigger problem than yours. Yours is just a small problem. Why are you getting so anxious? Why are you getting so depressed? It does not serve any problem. It does not take away the problem, and you will make the person feel more miserable, because what you have done in effect is told them that their problem is not important. And for every person, their problem is the most important problem in the world. And telling them that their problem is not important, we are creating a distance. So never do that. Never minimize or compare patients problems. Instead, what is to be done, we have to acknowledge that their problem is a problem, something like anybody in your position would perhaps feel this way. That's a good way of acknowledging the patient's problem, and normalize the patient's emotional experience. Don't say that your problem is normal. That normalize their emotional experience. Considering what you are going through, it's normal to feel this way. The patient says, I'm feeling so scared. And you can say, considering what you're going through, it is normal to feel this way. So you're validating the patient's experience of their emotion by normalizing their emotional experience. Next slide. Yes. Never give false hopes. Always give realistic hopes. And the simple thing to do that comes automatically to our mind is, don't worry, everything will be all right, we are there for you. And what if the person is not really in that situation? What if the person really is in a bad situation? So you have said the nice words and gone away, and the patient doesn't get better and eventually realizes that you have given them a false assurance, and imagine how the person will feel. So we have to be honest, but at the same time, we have to give them realistic hope. Being honest does not mean that we don't have any hope to give. And that is again one area where the palliative medicine and the palliative care area has an advantage, because most of the time we deal with patients who have what a typical medical person would call a hopeless situation. And most of the palliative care doctors in this group will vouch for what I'm saying, that there is no situation where we can't give some hope. There is always something to be hoped for. So your disease may be progressive, but I'll do my best to keep you comfortable. And this is that we say in our day-to-day clinical practice. People come to me with advanced cancers, and the treating doctors would have said there's nothing more from my side, and I get to tell them that even if your disease can't be cured, I'll make sure that you don't suffer. And most of the time, the answer that I get back is, doctor, that is all we wanted to hear, that one word from my side. So it is always possible to give realistic hope, and this is true for COVID also. Even when we are dealing with very sick COVID patients, and if they are conscious and they're scared and they're struggling, we have realistic hopes of giving them good comfort. And uh, we just had a session yesterday on breathlessness and cough, and things like that. And uh, learning those algorithms and learning those methods, that medications of how to provide comfort to patients is very important, because that is the realistic hope we can give them, that even if you are dying of COVID, we make sure that you will not suffer and die. Next slide. Do not assume until and unless we don't understand the patient's problem and then give a generic uh, assurance. Don't worry, COVID-19 for most people has only minimal symptoms, and 80% do not need any treatment at all. That is the good words from our side. But what if the patient was thinking, how will my children eat tonight? So all these nice words that we just said to this person has no value until and unless we know what patients are worried about or what people are worried about. And how can we know what they're worried about? Is to stop assuming and asking them. When you ask, you shall receive an answer. And when you get an answer, it is possible that you may not be able to give any assuring words in response, but that is okay. At least the act of listening to them is itself healing. When people tell you their problems, how am I going to get my daughter married off? You may not have a solution to that, but allowing them to ventilate their stress has an healing effect. If you have a solution to the problem, by all means go and give that solution. But most of the time, it is important to listen to the problem. Active listening once again. Next slide. Don't forget the human touch. You may be in coverall, you may be having a face mask or a gloves and boots, doesn't matter. Still, sit by the patient's side, touch them, not just for auscultation or palpation. Touch them human to human. That is very important. It creates so much of positive energy. And now this is very important. Regular briefing. Do regular briefing. Now regular briefing is at multiple level. One is for the family members, and it is best if a senior person of the institution is daily available, like in this case the chief minister of Kerala, who daily comes and does a press briefing. And it is so assuring to the people of the state that the chief minister comes and gives a daily bulletin of what happened, what is to be done, and what is we are hoping to achieve. So, similarly, all the patients' families and loved ones should be given a bulletin, either face to face, if that is not possible, through some kind of a electronic medium. The patients should also be given regular briefing, at least once a day, if possible, more than once a day to the patient and the family members. And it's also important that we brief our team, the medical team, as to what is the situation now, what is the plan for today, what are we hoping to do. So it is, and it's also an avenue where the team members can ask questions, and the patients can ask questions, and the family can ask questions, and their concerns can be looked into. So regular briefing is very important. Next slide. Yeah. So I mentioned about self care. Now, the very important component of self care is having a routine. And many a times, like it's happening in my hospital, 50% of the doctors are on reserve, and they have to be on reserve for 1 week, and the other 50 work for 1 week, and then it gets exchanged. So while one is at home, we still have to maintain a routine. We get up in the morning and do all the things that we would normally do. Having a routine keeps us in focus, and also make sure that, especially in stressful times, please exercise because it produces endorphins. It is good for us. And also keep the mind calm and focused with a little bit of meditation. There is no one way of doing exercise or one way of doing meditation. It is entirely up to you how you want to do it. Then also, if you are not busy, indulge in some hobby, something to take your mind off all the negative news coming in the channels. Read a book or something. Do a bit of gardening if possible. Anything that gives you happiness. And most important, stay connected. Now most of us are tech savvy, we know how to get connected, and there are many ways of staying connected. It's not just technology, but definitely don't forget social distancing. And before the last slide, I just want to there's no slide here, but I just want to direct you to resources. The ebook on palliative care in COVID has an excellent communication tips in COVID-19 on page 10 by Dr. Seema Rao and Dr. Purnima Sundar. It's very simple, lucid, and comprehensive. I urge you to please go through that in your ebook that I'm sure most of you would have had by now. Next slide. So I end up my presentation with a thank you. And if you have any queries or suggestions, do contact me. I'm Dr. Biju Raghavan, and my WhatsApp number is given there, and so is my email ID. And I'll be happy to take questions. Uh, I give the uh, baton back to Sunil, and Sunil will take it up from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So the session is open for discussion. If anybody has any comments or questions, please come up. Anybody? Any comments? Biju, there is one chat question. Can you explain how to break the bad news? Viju, please unmute Viju.
All right. Sorry. I I didn't realize I was muted. Anyway, so what I was saying was, in the context of COVID, I don't have an experience, but I do understand it is a hyper acute situation, and hence our traditional form of communicating bad news uh, may not work here. It will have to be modified because it's a hyperacute situation. Most of the time, the ability to communicate to the patient may be difficult because they may be acutely ill and they may not be in a position to communicate. Plus, with the caregivers in coveralls, the I understand that communication is a big challenge because it is very difficult to project the voice outside of your PPEs. However, as far as in the context of communicating bad news to the family, I guess it would be similar to how we are dealing with uh, in our regular bad communicating bad news. First of all, get them to understand. The points are point number one. Get them to find out what they understand about the situation. That is, we understanding what they understand about the situation. That is the family. And then the next thing is to probe whether they would want to know uh, the situation. Like, for example, giving a warning shot. Would you like to know, even if it is something very serious or something like that? And then once they say yes, then we will have to tell them, narrate them what has been happening in a sequential manner, and escalate the information, and that the person is gradually deteriorating, and gradually escalate information till they get to know what they wanted to know. That is the general. We have a spikes protocol, and that is how we generally do communicating bad news. It is essentially finding out what the person understands, finding out whether the person wants to know, and then explaining to them their story, like in a gradually escalating manner, till they get as much information that they wanted to know. We do not advocate forcing information on people more than they want to know. I hope that answers the question. It may not be satisfactory answer because it is something that we learn with role plays and mentoring. It cannot be satisfactorily answered in one answer.
Okay, Viju.
I'll be happy to hear from others in the palliative care world who may want to contribute to what I've said.
Anybody want to comment on that? No, I don't think there is. Any more questions or comments? There are no more comments or questions.
So probably we can
Yeah, wind up the
finish
session.
the session before time
Yeah,
today.
yeah. So Dr. Biju was talking about the importance of communication, and we understand how difficult it is in COVID times because of many barriers like personal protective equipment, and the problem barriers are both from patient side as well as from professional side. So PP from the doctors or professional side, and maybe the infectivity of the patient might be something which the professionals may be feared of, and the problems affecting communication from the patient, and patient may be in sad, patient may be sad or depressed because of diagnosis of COVID, and so many things which can be a barrier for communication in COVID times. And there are some way which we can, by which we can overcome this use of electronic medias, and maybe you use your smile in the voice. So these are something which we have to look for, and briefing the patient and family is one of the most important things which we have to concentrate, because the family will not be knowing anything once the patient is admitted into a COVID center. So it is very important to keep them updated regarding the progress of the patient. And we also understand the general principles of communication is also applicable here, which we have to keep in mind. And we had a few tips on how to handle a patient or caregiver who has anger. And we also talked about communicating bad news to the patient or family. So thank you, Vijay, for your wonderful presentation. And thank you all for your interactive.
Sunil,
Yeah,
one request. Will you be sharing the slides with everybody in this group who have
yes,
attended?
yes.
Yes. Yeah, because there have been some requests for sharing of the slides. The slides will be shared with everybody, I assume.
Yes, all the presentation will be shared with the participants.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
So thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. And before you leave, there is a feedback session that will be, please launch the feedback. I request all of you to please do this.
I request all of you to attend the feedback session and give feedback. Before